Willkommen in einem Video. Welcome to another exciting video, in this case episode 13 of my Star Trek The Original Series episode breakdown video series. In this video I'll be looking at Season 3, Episodes 68 to 73 of Star Trek The Original Series or Generation to identify historical references which can be used to determine the original history of the Star Trek universe. The episode order I'm using is the production order. In order to understand the development of the history or vision of Star Trek, we need to study the episodes in the order they were written. While I'm uncertain of the exact writing order, the production order is about as close as I can confirm. The episode order information as broadcast is also included. Special thanks to the transcripts which can be found on the Chakotay site. When Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek back in 1966, he had a vision which remained basically consistent over the following 3 years. The animated series and early movies retained this consistency in the most part. When The Next Generation was released in 1987, Gene's vision had changed, and the past needed to change in order to be consistent with this new vision. This video series will look at the original vision of Star Trek, starting with the earliest source material. Wink of an Eye is the 11th episode of the third season. It was the 68th episode produced. Its star date is 5710.5 and its original air date was the 29th of November 1968. As is normal, we discover yet another alien planet, in this case called Skarlos, which is uninhabited, even though the city on it seems intact. The Enterprise was in an outer quadrant, or let's just say beyond the Federation borders. The civilization on Skarlos consisted of 900,000 people and the city held 113,000 people. Does not seem like a very large civilization. A long time ago, which could have been a short time in normal time, the civilization was hit by volcanic eruptions, obviously global, which caused everyone to accelerate for some reason. I assume that they rebuilt the city and created a drug which accelerated others. The result was sterility in the men, so the women needed other men. This is clearly a human or humanoid civilization, perhaps placed there by the preservers, who knows. If global volcanoes cause this disaster, the city could not be rebuilt until the eruptions had reduced or ended. The Enterprise does not mention any volcanoes, so this could indicate the global volcanic eruptions occurred a long time ago. This could be similar to the Siberian traps, which means it may have occurred about 6 million years ago. Wild guess. How could this work? Let's assume the effects were acceleration, but another effect is longevity, which must be hundreds of thousands of years of life. The race could have survived in safe areas, and when the eruptions ended, they went out to rebuild their city, which could have occurred 20 minutes earlier in the normal timeline. As they have lured people several times in the past, this would have been several hundred years in the past. This is a stretch, but this is about the only theory which I think fits all the facts as presented. Key takeaway from this episode are another alien planet with an alien civilization on it which will soon become extinct. Rather sad. I wonder why the drug to reverse the time acceleration was not effective on the aliens. That which survives is the 17th episode of the third season. It was the 69th episode produced. Its star date is unknown, and its original air date was 24th of January 1969. The Enterprise finds another planet, but this time it's a ghost planet. It does not look natural. We later discover it is an artificial planet, but only has a name of outpost or post. In this episode, we discover the Enterprise can travel 990.7 light years in 11.5 hours at warp 8.4. This is very fast, much faster than earlier references. The ghost planet, unnamed, unless you want to call it post or outpost, was created by the Caledans. This result, that is, building this planet, resulted in a deadly disease which killed everyone on the planet, or artificial planet. A ship was sent back to the home planet, assuming to ask for help. Unfortunately, it carried the disease, destroying the entire civilization. The artificial planet was protected by an automatic defense system or computer. We can assume there is another dead civilization out there somewhere on the planet of Caladan. Key takeaway from this episode we discover another dead alien planet, in this case Caladan. I have no idea of its age, perhaps as a wild guess, 100,000 years old. But this guess is only a placeholder. Incidentally, we probably don't know its location, we just know it's out there somewhere. This civilization created an artificial planet called Outpost, which caused the disease somehow. We do know where that outpost or planet is. Let That Be Your Last Battlefield is the 15th episode of the third season. It was the 17th episode produced. Its star date is 5730.2 and its original air date was 10th of January 1969. We discover in this episode that there's a planet called Uranus, probably a Federation planet, which has populations of billions of people. We also get another mention of Starbase 4th. The Enterprise remains in the same general reason for this season so far. We meet in this episode a strange race which has black on one side of the face or body and white on the other. The two aliens have their colours on opposite sides. One of the aliens calls the Federation United Fleet of Planets, but this is corrected by Kirk. In this episode, we do actually discover a new alien planet, in this case called Cheron, which is the home of the bi-coloured people. The two aliens left their planet 50,000 years ago, so whatever destroyed their civilization must have occurred far more recently, perhaps 100 years ago. Although if there are corpses, this must have occurred very recently indeed. I suspect this is an error and the corpses are the remnants of the bodies, so I'm going to say that this civilization collapsed in 2166 AD. The takeaways we get from this episode are: there is a major Federation planet called Arianus with a population of billions, most likely an alien planet. We discover a new alien non-Federation civilization and planet, Cheron. This civilization is now extinct, except for two people fighting it out on the planet. Whom Gods Destroy is the 17th episode of the third season. It was the 71st episode produced. Its star date is 5718.3 and its original air date was 3rd of January 1969. In the episode, we're introduced to Elba 2. Elba 2 is a Federation prison camp, a planet. It's not habitable. We also have another Federation planet mentioned, I think it's Federation, called Izar, which I'm pretty certain must be a Federation planet, most likely a human non-colony planet. We meet another green-skinned Orion woman, always good to see them in an episode. In this episode, we also briefly meet an Andorian. As well as the Andorian, we also meet a Tellarite. In this episode, we do discover a new planet, Antos 4, which houses a peaceful non-human civilization. The inhabitants have the ability to shapeshift, which they teach to Garth, one of the characters in the episode. They are probably not a Federation member when Garth encountered them. It's likely they may be a Federation planet, as the Federation planet borders would have moved far past their planet. But as there is a lack of shape-shifting characters in Star Trek, I have to assume they remain independent, and the survey was well outside Federation space, so they're not part of the Federation, or at least not commonly known. They may have been discovered, or the planet may have been discovered after 2245. This episode provides some detail about a Federation victory at Axanar against an unknown enemy, which Captain Garth where Captain Garth commanded the Federation forces. Assuming Garth was 30, which is young but possible, and he is now 50, this may have occurred in 2246. There was a battle between the Klingons and Federation in 2242, which may have lasted until 2245, so I assume this was part of that conflict. This war was a minor affair, involved allies on both sides, possibly similar to the modern Korean War. The result was a draw, which may be a good description of the Korean War as well. Also mentioned in this episode is a conflict between the Enterprise and a Romulan vessel. This occurred, or the conflict occurred at Tal Cetai. This must have been the incident which occurred in 2264, 2 years prior. Assuming this is correct, we now know the planet where the Enterprise destroyed the Romulan bird of prey, as well as the maneuver used, or at least the name of the maneuver that was used in the battle. Key takeaway is in this episode we're giving a long list of new planets. Elba 2, a Federation prison planet. Izar, Federation member planet, most likely human. Antos, alien independent planet and civilization, shapeshifters. Axanar, location where the Federation defeated, most likely a Klingon fleet in a minor Cold War style conflict. It's likely Axanar was in a Federation allied space, so the planet may have been a Federation allied planet, or could have been totally uninhabited. Tal Cetai, a planet in Federation space where the Federation defeated a Romulan warboard or warship, most likely uninhabited, or could have been a colony planet. The Mark of Gideon is the 16th episode of the third season. It was the 72nd episode produced. Its star date is 5423.4 and its original air date was 17th of January 1969. We discover yet another alien planet, in this case Gideon. Gideon is an alien planet which is not part of the Federation, but probably within Federation space. An interesting fact, the Enterprise takes up a geosynchronous orbit over the capital city of Gideon, which puts it an awful long way away from the planet, but maybe that's the normal way that the Enterprise orbits other planets. We discover Gideon is a planet free of disease and with no birth control. The result is a overpopulated hellhole. I'm uncertain why they have not run out of food, but that doesn't seem to be a major issue at this point, or at least in this episode. Kirk apparently has an illness, or had an illness, called a vegan choriomeningitis, which almost killed him. I am assuming this may come from a system called Vega. It could be a Vega colony, or Vega 9, for example, which we know about. The key takeaways from this episode are: we discover a new alien planet called Gideon, which is an overpopulated hellhole. There is a serious disease originating possibly from the planet or a colony called Vega. The Lights of Zetar is the 18th episode of the third season. It was the 73rd episode produced. Its star date is 5725.3 and its original air date was 31st of January 1969. In the episode, we learn the Federation has a planet which contains all the knowledge of the Federation, and it's called Memory Alpha. I suppose we could say it's a Federation library planet. We get another crew count in this episode. In this episode, we discovered there are 430 crew, which aligns with most other references, except possibly the first one. We now know there are more than one Martian colony. This is Martian Colony 3, which is mentioned, so there must be a Martian Colony 1 and Martian Colony 2. These are colonies which the inhabitants of Mars probably created. I could be wrong, but if this was on Mars, why is it called Mars 3? Why do we have separate colonies on a single planet, for example? Zetar is an alien non-Federation planet which was destroyed a millennium ago, 1,000 years I expect. So this was in 1266 AD. Yes, it's another alien planet that we've discovered. As an overview of the episode, we get names of a number of new planets. Memory Alpha is a Federation research or library planet. We name one of the Mars colonies, in this case Martian Colony 3. Thus there must be a Mars Colony 1 and Mars Colony 2 as well. Zetar is an alien planet which was destroyed probably in 1266 AD. The crew number is 430, which aligns with the episode Shore Leave. Many of the latter Star Trek movies and shows do not align with the original vision of the series. This is common in real history, as later historians attempt to change the past to justify their new beliefs in the present. As I personally enjoyed the original vision of Star Trek, I would hope future TV shows and movies would go back to its original roots, but this is unlikely. And so we come to the end of the video. This concludes episode 13 of my Star Trek, the original series episode breakdown video series, in this case covering season 3, episodes 68 to 73. Alle guten Dinge kommen zu einem Ende.